Different.
Yeah, I just, once the it gets harder to clean the beard, I just shave the
Just shave it off.
yeah.
All right, let me open back up your mentor screen. So obviously I've gone through all of your stuff. Thank you for being patient. I know this got delayed a couple times. So what I'll do is I'll have you like normal reflect, and then if you have any, insights or anything you want to share, and then I'll go through my thoughts and stuff like that.
Sure, absolutely. So, overall, compared to the first two lessons, I thought that this is the best one out of the three. I thought doing the timer and pacing when it made it go really well, transitioning from activity to activity, and help keep the students engaged and not kind of find like a lull when we get too deep into a conversation. And I thought that they did I think they did a good job with the think pair, and they shared together, but we didn't share with the whole class because of the speaker. But I thought one of the things that could be improved the next time is to like in the video when I'm watching some of the groups, they're not really like engaged with each other. Even though they're talking, they're kind of like separated a little bit. They're not looking at each other. So maybe kind of work on those things a little bit in future activities. And then I thought that they were really engaged and responsive with being able to like make some sort of video that showcased what they learned about the Supreme Court cases and school dress codes and stuff.
Yeah, so I would agree. I mean, I think all of your videos have been, really great. So, but I do think that this one went well. It was very smooth. I would agree that from start to finish, it seemed to flow really nicely. I like that you had brought in that guest speaker and stuff like that. So I think it was definitely a very nice and cohesive, from start to finish lesson. I like the fact that it, connected content that was applicable to the students as well, which is not always easy to do. But you did a good job. I like the idea of tying in the dress code. Super controversial, usually. Can really be a tricky conversation to have. I think your students did a really nice job with it. I think they were honest, and for the most part, most of the students could see some value in at least having limited restrictions, whether they believed fully in having a dress code, or every aspect of the dress code. I guess could say they were able to communicate that it is needed for all intensive purposes. I really liked the videos at the end. I thought it was an at first I was like, wait a minute, because I didn't really get it took me a minute with the video where they were going back and forth with a knife. I was like, wait, then I was like, oh, this is the purpose. So that was funny. And I think it was good because it did show the fact that that is reality. That right there, especially with anything like this, but even dress code, there are always those two opposing sides. And like, how do
Right.
you marry that and how do you bring that into the middle, is usually where policy, whether it be law or, at the national or state level or school district level, comes from trying to marry the middle.
Right.
And that was kind of a good way to say, like, I want to carry a knife. No, I wouldn't even feel safe on campus if students could carry a knife. So seeing those opposing viewpoints are good for kids. And I like the fact that the last student kind of talked about the negative implications that come with, whether it be social media or what have you, with, almost like body shaming type stuff. So I think that was good. She touched on the double standard that does often happen with things like tank tops. I would agree with her. Even in my school setting, we don't allow them, and girls are probably more frequently caught, I would say, with the tank top, maybe. But anyways, I thought it was a really good lesson. I think it was structured really well from start to finish. I think you broke down the content well. You brought in a guest speaker. You allowed for the pair, the partner work there in the middle to have it be collaborative. And then ultimately they had to work together to create some kind of presentation at the end regarding the video. I did make a couple little recommendations. Student chatter in the beginning, but they did settle down relatively quickly. So I usually take notes while I'm watching. And I noticed at first there was a couple students interjecting while you were trying to kind of go over the lesson objectives, but they settled down like quickly. So that wasn't really a super negative. I thought that maybe potentially some kind of visual support when the guest speaker was talking, whether it be you taking notes and sharing them out after, or something to just kind of go along with that, because for students that struggle just taking in the verbal content, it can be tricky. But he was great. He had a really good personality actually for something like that. And then the only other recommendation I had was for the PSA that they made, and they could have had this, would be a rubric or checklist for them to kind of refer back to while they were creating it, so that they could A, know how they were going to be evaluated, and B, also know or have something to allow them to ensure that they hit all of the required components.
Yeah, I thought I felt really kind of it was very unfortunate that the second group with that video, because I put in the reflection piece, but we had like there was a bunch of school shooting hoaxes. So we were in lockdown for a majority of the day when they were filming and editing. So yeah, it was a little problematic on their end, and but yeah, including a rubric for sure. I didn't really think of that at the time because it was kind of like the one thing that I didn't prepare for in this lesson was up until our virtual class, where it was added to. We thought we were just going to film the class looking for standard 4 and 5, and I already had my lesson plan, thought out. And then in the class, we learned that we had to create an activity that had some sort of project-based learning component to it. So that was kind of like it felt like a little bit of a rushed modification on my part with the classroom instructor. So I had not really prepared a rubric for that, even though I just assessed like the collaboration that they did in both the classroom activity, and on Wednesday we were in the digital film room, so they were finishing up their videos and everything. But for the next activity, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think too, it's just, you talked about the timing and all of that. So it's just moving forward, because they came out great. So obviously the students understood expectations and what you were looking for them to do. So I guess it would just be something to potentially add moving forward if you felt it was necessary. And obviously it's unfortunate when we do have the safety measures that have to be taken. Kind of does impact teaching and learning all the time right now. And you're right, it's a quick turnaround with clinical when you find out or when you realize what you have to do and when it's due. So I can understand all of that too.
And in your opinion, is that like for any sort of activities that we plan, should there always be a rubric component to that, or is that something that has lengthier requirements that might be like a multi-class or maybe a multi-week process?
Right. So I would definitely think if it's anything that's going to be multiple days or where students are required to work independently, the rubric or checklist. So if it's not something that's very lengthy, a quick checklist is good for them too, just so that they can go through and say, okay, he wants me to have, a title, or he wants us to have, 2 key facts or whatever it is that you want them to have, just so that they can say, yep, I did that. Sometimes that's easier for those shorter scale projects outside of like a lengthier rubric, but definitely a rubric if it's something that's going to take, multiple class periods, or if students are going to be working on it outside of class, because it's almost when you're not there, it gives them an opportunity to look back and have that guidance as they progress forward.
Okay, great.
Let's see. So in regards regarding your scores, I gave you outstanding in all of the elements outside of standard 4 element 2. Just the misconceptions piece, we'll kind of keep working on that one in regards to the reflection after the lesson and just moving, and that just usually takes more time for me to fully be able to evaluate how you redirect instruction for misconceptions and redesigns lessons for misconceptions. So again, I have, I have 2 more videos to see, which will help me get more data on that before I really give you a score that ultimately counts.
Okay.
Any questions for me?
So for the next lesson that I have planned, we'll be doing sort of like a gamification where I have them playing the iCivics game, Do I Have a Right? And I want to incorporate the vocabulary. So originally I was going to have them write reflections on the different types of scenarios, but because of this is the third lesson of collecting the data, and one of the things I've noticed is that the vocabulary has just remained very stagnant as far as the work that they've accomplished. So for regular, I guess not regular students, but like for high achieving students, I'm having them, write out the vocabulary word and then write out different sentences in their own words using the vocabulary word. But for average to lower performing students, like they haven't really filled their word bank as much when I check. But when we do in-class activities, they seem to perform really well. So I'm just trying to find a way to, whether it's like one partner writes down the scenario, the other person writes down the vocabulary words because they're highlighted in blue. So I'm just wondering if maybe you've ever used iCivics and how you might incorporate the vocabulary as part of playing the game.
So I haven't. The only thing I can think of for vocabulary would be using another like digital tool that could allow them to study, like a Quizlet or something like that. But I think I like the idea of them working with partners and pairs, and I think that could tie in nicely. Vocab is tricky because ultimately when students are at the secondary level in high school, they don't interact with like traditional vocabulary quizzes as often, and it becomes extremely challenging for them to do like recall. They can
Right.
usually get it right in context, but when you isolate the vocabulary, they tend to struggle.
Yeah, I've noticed that the other thing is just that in general with a lot of my students that if it's not something we do in class, it very rarely gets done outside of class. Um, so it's trying to I guess kind of like make sure that everything can get done inside of a class period as well.
Yeah, I made note of that in your actually in my reflection for this last video because you had given them the opportunity to read within class, and I said it's so important that we do that because 9 times out of 10, and I think even more so now with COVID, we've created kids that don't do homework. We struggle every day. I work in a high needs high school. And we have gone almost completely away from homework for the time being because we can't get them to do it. Even our honors kids, to be honest, are not doing it at the level that they should be. So I had made note of that in yours, that it was good that you were allotting class time for things, that reading, which traditionally is probably something you would have wanted them to come in having done so that you could just do the pair share and then the whole class share out. But I don't know that we're there yet. I mean, I know my school isn't, and your school system is very similar to mine. Like we have a career and tech center with us as well. So we service a very similar student body. So we have to alter the way we teach. So I think that's right. Finding ways to do the vocabulary in the room kind of has to happen.
Right. Yeah. And it's tough too because each class is an hour long, and like on paper, I feel like, wow, that's such a long time, but it really goes by quickly. And trying to do like content instruction and then the activities on top of it, like each lesson seems like it flies by.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess I should say the vocabulary instruction has to take place during the lesson if you think it's worthy of your class time. I wouldn't put it in there just for the sole purpose of a Moreland activity.
Oh no, it's I mean it's definitely something that I think is lacking in their
Okay.
visual skills. So so it's something that I do want to do, um, but it's just something where I feel like I'm constantly trying to like count out the minutes in my mind, thinking, oh, I have a whole hour. It's so easy, and then in reality, an hour just goes by like that. So
Yeah, I mean, it can be if you do like a quizzes with them where it's basically like flashcards, you can get a lot of review done in a very quick period of time, because it cycles through the words so fast for them. And
right,
there's like a little bit of a competitive aspect at the end. If you go to a gameplay with it, they will kind of race against each other.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else for me?
Um, I think I'm all set.
Okay. So we'll plan to meet whenever you're set for standard 6, 7, and 8. Things should be settling down a little bit. My assistant principal was out
Oh
last
wow.
week. Yeah, so he's back, so that's good. So I think things will be fine moving forward for regular meetings and all of that will be good.
Okay, great. Well, I don't know. Do you guys have President's Day off or
So we're
March
off
Month?
this week. So we have this week for, well, this I work, the kids are off, which is, nice anyways, just a little bit of time to get caught up on things.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope you have a relaxing work week then.
Thank you. Enjoy your time off as well.
Thank you. Talk to
All
you
right.
later.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you too. Bye.
Bye.